So, 5 concepts I have sought in my personal assessments is that I'm a very accommodating person when it comes to conflict management. I tend to want to see people happy before I see myself happy, which I find isn't the best thing to do, especially if my opinion is important. I've also found that I tend to believe in the self-fulfilling prophecy. I think if you believe that you do good, you will do good. So, for example, in my job interviews, I always tell myself and try and feel that I'm going to do well in the job interview. And I tend to do well in the job interview when I tell myself that. I also find meaning in my family. I tend to define myself through what I've learned in my family and through what my family has taught me. I find a lot of meaning through my sister. I think we relate a lot. We look alike and we have the same likes and interests. Even though we are 4 years apart, I do have a picture of her. It's some people say we look exactly alike. I don't really see it, but some people do say so. Our rooms are the same color. We have just a lot of things in common, so I feel I define myself through her a lot. Something else I found in my assessments was that I need to work on being empathetic. I'm more sympathetic than anything, and I think it's hard for me to be empathetic when I can't feel for the other person or I don't know what the other person is going through necessarily, so I don't know how exactly to talk to them if I can't really feel for them. I also found that I need to work on my nonverbal communication. I found that I have a very ambiguous language, I guess, in my nonverbal communication. I also have heard that I have a resting face when I'm just standing there. I tend to have this face that I'm upset or annoyed, and I'm not. I'm actually quite fine. I'm just standing there. So 5 concepts that I've learned is that there is a meta communication or a communication about communication. I just feel like I talk to my family and my friends a lot about things that we talk about. So we communicate about the communication that we had. I feel I'm running into this a lot as I get older. I think it's a mature or more mature thing to do or to communicate about versus when you're younger. Another thing I found was the difference between self-concept and self-esteem. I never really thought about the self-concept. I knew about self-esteem and your self-worth, but self-concept, I never really thought about the perceptions that I hold for myself or how I think of myself and place myself in society or how I do or how I act. I also learned that the we language takes on language responsibility that people tend I think I should start using this after I learned it because my sister and I tend to not take responsibility for our communication with each other, and I think we should start doing that just because sometimes it is both her fault and my fault. We both did something wrong. And then another thing I learned was that to maintain relationships and friendships, especially relationships, I guess I don't really show an assurance of how I feel towards the person. I never remind them how they make me feel or how I feel towards them. I tend to not show that, even though I feel that way. I tend to not tell them, and I found that it would be more beneficial if I did tell them how I felt and how I continue to feel and how much I loved them and stuff. Another thing I learned was about the incongruous response. I tend to do this a lot, and it is very disconfirming, as the book says, where if somebody asks me how I feel or how's my day or how I'm doing, I say, oh, I'm fine, even though I had the worst day of my life. I think that they can tell on my face that I'm not okay, and I feel that builds a wall of distrust because if I'm not telling them what's wrong, then they must think I don't trust them, and that's not something I want somebody to feel, or that they feel that they can't get to know me or know me enough to know what's wrong, and that's not really the case. I guess I just don't really like airing how I feel. I'm not good at communicating my feelings so much. I just kind of keep them to myself. A few things that I've learned that I could use in my personal and professional life is the we language. the language of responsibility, I think that'll be very useful in my personal life. Between like my sister and I, when we argue, we could use like the we language to solve our arguments, or take responsibility for our arguments. Another thing is professionally, my non-verbal communication. I think I need to work on like my gestures and my facial expressions, because I'm not very open about how I feel non-verbally. I tend to look very closed off and very reserved when I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm open and everything, but I tend to look very, I guess, upset. Another thing I would like to work on professionally is snap judgments. That usually leads to stereotyping people with me. I learned this through the resume exercise. I tend to see somebody or something or hear something about them and make a quick judgment about them, and then I stereotype everybody else I meet after that who is in relation to that or has a similarity to that. And I don't think that's a good idea for me to be doing, especially professionally, when I don't really know anybody I would be working with. Another thing I would like to work on that I learned about professionally is listening, especially responding. I didn't think responding was something correlated with listening to somebody. I definitely want to work on responding to people when I have to listen to what they say. I usually respond in my head. I usually like think about it and I know what I'm going to say or something, and I don't actually tell them, so I feel that they don't think I listened to them when really I did. I also would like to personally work on deliberate transgressions. Between me and my sister, I tend to do things just to make her upset. That's what sisters do. I also finally would like to personally work on recognition of people, which is like a confirming communication tactic. I need to recognize the person. I tend to not do that. I tend to like waver over that and just like listen to what they say, and I don't really recognize them or respond to them. So yes, that is everything that I've learned, things that I can take off professionally and personally, and the findings I've found through my assessments through this course of interpersonal communication.